What if slavery had never existed in America? From the very beginning, the country would have been built on a foundation dramatically different from the one we know. Without the forced labor of millions of Africans, the southern colonies could not have developed their vast plantation economies in the same way. Instead, they would have been forced to rely on smaller-scale farming, paid labor, or perhaps early industrialization, leading to an economy less divided between an agricultural South and an industrial North. The absence of slavery would have erased the single greatest source of political tension in the early United States. The bitter divisions over whether new states would permit slavery would not have existed, and the Civil War, the bloodiest conflict in American history, might never have happened. Without that war, hundreds of thousands of lives would have been spared, and the nation would not have faced the long, painful process of Reconstruction with all its failures and resentments. African Americans, instead of being brought in chains, might have arrived as immigrants, traders, or allies, participating freely in the building of the new nation. From its founding, America could have been a truly multicultural democracy, with black citizens contributing to politics, business, science, and the arts from the earliest days. The enormous cultural contributions of African Americans in music, literature, language, and cuisine would still exist, but perhaps without the deep scars of oppression and resistance. The nation's ideals of liberty and equality would have been more credible both at home and abroad. The contradiction of a country proclaiming freedom while holding millions in bondage damaged America's moral authority for generations. Without slavery, the United States could have stood from the beginning as a model for human rights, influencing other nations to end their own systems of forced labor sooner. Economically, the South might have modernized far earlier. Without the profitability of slave-based agriculture, investments could have flowed into industry, infrastructure, and education. Cities in the South could have grown into centers of innovation and trade, instead of remaining dependent on cash crops. The North and South might have developed along more parallel economic lines, reducing regional hostility and creating a more unified nation. Immigration patterns would also be different. The need for labor in the absence of slavery might have led to greater waves of European, Asian, and even African migration, with workers arriving voluntarily and bringing their cultures with them. America's diversity could have been even richer, woven together by choice rather than by force. But the absence of slavery would not mean the absence of racism. Prejudice and discrimination have deep roots, and they might still have shaped social hierarchies. However, without centuries of institutionalized bondage, the economic and social gap between white and black Americans would likely have been far smaller. Generations of wealth-building opportunities would not have been denied to black families, meaning they could own land, start businesses, and gain education without legal barriers holding them back. The ripple effects on science, politics, and culture are hard to overstate. Leaders, inventors, and thinkers who might have been born into slavery, and thus silenced by history, could instead have shaped the course of the nation. America's technological and cultural growth might have been even faster, with contributions coming from a broader share of its people. On the global stage, a United States without slavery might have been viewed as a moral leader from the start. Its founding principles of liberty and justice would have been consistent with its actions, inspiring oppressed people elsewhere and strengthening alliances based on shared values. Yet, this alternate America would not simply be a utopia. Economic challenges in the early years might have slowed expansion, and tensions with native nations and foreign powers would still have existed. But the absence of slavery would have spared the nation from one of its deepest moral failures, and from the centuries of racial injustice that followed. In this version of history, America's promise might have been realized sooner. Its people, with all its people, and we could have worked together from the beginning to shape a nation where freedom was not just a dream, but a reality from the very first day.